Well, in fact, I didn't really begin my career as a designer. I began my career as a jeweler and a silversmith, but very quickly moved to designing furniture when I was in my early 20s, because I always wanted to be a furniture designer. No, my real focus is absolutely industrial design. That's what I spend most of my time doing now, 90%. Of course, I do work a little bit in the, let's say, in the art world, but that's really a hobby and something that I do for pure pleasure. It's a very difficult thing to try to understand what I like to design and what I don't like to design. For sure, I'm not a fashion designer, that should be clear, but in terms of products, I love to design all kinds of products. I don't really prefer one thing to another. I like the ability to be able to design all kinds of things, because that's the job of a designer, is not to design one thing, is to be able to use your skill as a designer to solve problems in many different areas. Well, I accepted to work with Pentax because the initial brief for this project was very, very satisfying. We've developed a fantastic working relationship together, which I think is borne out by the results of our collaboration. And also the fact that I hadn't designed a camera before. This is really the first opportunity that I had to work on a project like this, and I'd been thinking about working on a project like this for many years, so it was a great opportunity when it came along. Absolutely, I love taking pictures. I love taking pictures for many different reasons, but as part of my job, of course, I'm obliged to take many pictures. I work in a visual world, so the whole concept of recording images, taking images, visualizing images is really, it's what I do. It's my job. Photography, I think, influences my work for the same reasons that I work in a visual world. You know, I live my life through images of things. On a day-to-day basis, I'm constantly looking at images of designs, of prototypes, of projects in progress. So looking at images is really, for me, fundamental. Favorite photographer? I have a lot of favorite photographers, a lot of photographers that I've worked with in the past. It depends what kind of photographer you're talking about, whether it's in the world of fashion or something else. There are simply many people whose work I admire in many different types of photography. It's a big world, the world of photography, so difficult to be specific. The inspiration behind this design, like many projects that I work on, is simply the desire to want to create something which, as a consumer, I myself would like to own or would like to purchase. What I'm always trying to do as a designer is to create objects that I personally would be attracted to. For example, that I could be in a duty-free store in an airport, or I could be walking down a main street and walk past an object in a shop and see something that I've designed and feel that I could spend the money that's in my pocket on that object at the time. And that sounds quite naive, but really that's my criteria, because there are a lot of objects, there are a lot of things in the world that I don't like as a designer. So to have the opportunity to change the landscape of the world in which I live is really a great opportunity. I think for me, the most important thing was to design two things really. To design an object which was simple, which was clean, which was clear in its philosophy, its design philosophy, but also had a high level of quality. For me, quality is obviously one of the most important things. In all of the work that I do, quality is absolutely number one. I think Pentax have absolutely satisfied that requirement. So the rest was really up to me to make sure that the camera looked good and it looked contemporary as well. I think it's very important for me to create projects or products that are modern, but will also stand the test of time in the sense that they will potentially become iconic or classic products in years to come. The target audience, I guess, in a very simplistic way, would perhaps be somebody like me. But of course, the market for a product like this is huge. I mean, we're talking hundreds of thousands of units. So of course, not all of these consumers will be like me. My philosophy with design is to try to provide a choice for consumers. But I think it's going to be a consumer that likes modern objects, but likes classic objects, likes well-designed objects. I also feel that the consumer, the type of consumer that this product appeals to, will be pleased to finally have a camera of this nature on the market, which is clean and simple and straightforward. The process with Pentax was fairly straightforward. I mean, we were under a very tight timeline, of course, which was a fantastic way of working, because either of us don't like to waste time when we're working together. Essentially, we provided a design concept in the initial stages to Pentax. It was pretty quickly agreed upon by all parties, specifically Pentax. And then we set about trying to define the most efficient way of working together, which of course we did, and it was really a step-by-step process. We provided the design. Pentax immediately come back and say, well, we can do this and this, but we cannot do this, we need to work around this. And then we come back with alternatives, and we went back and forwards, literally hundreds and hundreds of times over the course of a year. And that's a fairly typical way of working in my business, because providing a design concept will only ever be a concept. In order to get something to reality, one needs to make changes through the technical evolution of a product. And that's why we end up where we do. But it's a very normal way of working. The one thing I can say about working with Pentax is that it was a pleasurable process, because often that way of working isn't always that agreeable. But Pentax really were able to implement all of our wishes and desires and philosophies with a minimum of fuss. Well, that's always the challenge, because my job as a designer is to be able to express myself with all of the technical constraints that exist. That's an absolutely normal process for me. 50% of my business is working in the aviation industry. And I can tell you that working in the aviation business, it's infinitely more complex in this case, working with Pentax. In fact, working with Pentax was really like, there wasn't very much that we couldn't do, really. They were very proactive, and we were really amazed that we were able to push the design as far as we did, because it's really quite an innovative project that we've worked on together. Well, in the same way that Pentax perceived this object as a way of capturing moments, I perceive this object as a way of capturing a moment let's say, in the history of design. So in a sense, we philosophically are quite well aligned in that department. Capturing images, capturing moments, for me it's exactly the same thing when I'm doing my job. I'm trying to solidify a moment in time with the design. We had many challenges along the way, but all of the challenges that we were presented with, we were able to resolve. And again, that's part of my job. A gun for hire, I'm a troubleshooter. My job as a designer is to solve problems, as is Pentax's job in the technical department to solve problems. So we were constantly presenting each other's challenges, which we were able to solve along the way. I can honestly say that the biggest challenge that we faced collectively, and more specifically for the Japanese team, was the natural disaster that occurred during the course of the development of this product. I must say that we were all absolutely astounded the way that the team at Pentax were able to rise to the challenge during that terrible tragedy. It's probably not any one specific thing, except of course the final result. I think, at the end of the day, seeing the final product, really answering all of our technical requirements and aesthetic requirements. Very often in the world of design, you can work very hard for a long time, and the result is not quite what you think it should be. But I can honestly say in this particular case, I'm looking at an object which I think is incredibly well resolved and really answers all of the questions that have been asked over the last year during the course of the development of this product. So, you know, the most memorable moment for me is feeling and touching and seeing the real thing, answering all of my expectations. You know, I wanted to present an image of quality and of expertise in the area of photography. Some of my most favourite photographic devices have been Pentax products, notably iconic products like the Pentax 6.7 camera are things that I kind of grew up with, not in my capacity as a photographer, but in my capacity as a person that loves objects. So I wanted to kind of get back to the roots of the quality of the brand and try to create something that was really unique and that was iconic. Well, I would define the KO1 as a semi-professional, very, very purposeful object for taking photographs. I think the overwhelming impression I have of this product is that it's not gimmicky at all. This is really a serious tool. It feels like a quality product. And I think it looks serious as well. You know, so often I see products that are well manufactured and are manufactured by high quality manufacturers, but sometimes because of the design they just don't look that serious. I think this looks serious, but it's also simple. You know, it's an object which I think is very, very clear and very, very clean in its presentation. I don't feel that it's an intimidating object to use. If I look at the amount of functionality in this camera and the way that it's presented to the consumer in terms of its user interface, it's very, very easy to understand. I would love the opportunity to continue working with Pentax in any capacity. And I'm not saying that so much because of the results of our collaboration. I'm saying that because of the process that we've developed in terms of working together in a very, very seamless and efficient way. So it was a very, very enjoyable process for us. I think both of our teams worked incredibly well together. The results is very, very coherent, and I think shows that the collaboration that we were able to develop, the way of communicating with each other, despite the fact that we're on opposite sides of the world, is really fantastic. Well, it's difficult to understand what message I would give the consumer. Rather, I would like to try to understand what the consumer feels when they see this product. I mean, I think I understand that when they see this product, it's going to look quite different in the marketplace, which is already a good thing, you know, because if we can at least differentiate the product visually with everything that the competitors are doing, it's a great thing. But I think that the consumers will be happy. You know, I think that consumers will be happy that we've given them a choice, because I don't see an enormous amount of individuality in the marketplace. And I think Pentax have been able to identify that there was an opportunity to try to address that. Well, I'm not sure if I necessarily would consider this a piece of art. It's a wonderful compliment. Rather, I'd like to try and think of this design simply as a piece of good design. We all know that there's a lot of products out there in the market that are not necessarily what one would consider good design. Well, primarily that the actual result of our collaboration has resulted in an object that we're both very, very happy with. And I can tell you that in my industry, it doesn't always happen like that, that there's such a coherent evolution from concept to the final resulting object. I can say in this particular case, from the moment that we started working together until the moment that we saw this project in reality, it was a very, very, very clear path and a very coherent path. And what we have here is, in essence, what was proposed in the initial concept.